It's July 2025, and we are at the middle of the year. So, this is a really good time to review what's happened so far and reset and realign for the rest of 2025. So, I've opened up space for readings for this. And actually, last year I did this and it sold out. So, if you want to check it out, you can go to quietmindastrology.com/readings and you can book a mid year clarity reading and align for the rest of 2025. I've been feeling a lot of big shifts myself, as a lot has moved this year, a lot of big changes, a lot of growth in my own work and my expression in that way. I talked about this in recent episodes, but the Jupiter, Saturn, Rahu, and Ketu transits are the really big ones to always watch out for, the big themes of your life. And I did deep dives into all of those in the archives. You can check those out. I've had a really good feedback on all of that. And that's sort of setting the stage for what are the big changes for you over the next year. And one of them for me is improving a lot in my career and my work and my purpose. And I've been very inspired to come back to doing videos on YouTube. So you can watch us on YouTube or on Spotify if you want to see the transits on the page with me as I'm going through them and follow along that way. On the Quiet Mind Astrology YouTube or on the Spotify podcast, we'll show the video as well. So I'm going to talk about the 10 major transits happening this week, how you can best work with them, and you can follow along on the video if you'd like. So the first major thing to talk about in July is that July 2nd is actually the midpoint of the year on the calendar. But as I talked about recently, the actual solstice, so the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere, winter solstice in the southern hemisphere, just happened a little bit ago. That was on June 20th this year. It's usually on the 20th or 21st. It was on the 20th this year, the solstice. That's like the midpoint of the year spiritually and energetically. That means the sun standing still, solstice. So it's an opportunity to pause, stand still, and reflect on what's happened and realign for the rest of the year. And on the calendar, actual calendar, that's July 2nd. So I really encourage taking some time, if like you're always listening to media, maybe taking a day where you don't consume media. Or if you have a lot of activity going on in your life and your schedule, maybe taking a day where there's less activity, more stillness. It could be as simple as just 5 minutes, but sometimes that can be really powerful. Just setting a timer for 5 minutes and just being in stillness. So the sun standing still, the sun is our vitality, our energy, our power, our authority, our creativity, our leadership. When it pauses and stands still like this, it's good for us to center and stand still ourselves and just recenter. So that's July 2nd. And then on July 5th, we have the next notable transit is Neptune moving retrograde in Uttara Bhadrapada in Pisces. So this can bring spiritual clarity, can bring time for reflection, a lot of intuition. It's a good time for revisiting your creative visions. And this one is going on for quite a while. So Neptune transits retrograde every year pretty much for about 5 or 6 months. So it's going to go carry us through the end of the year. And this is a really good time for spiritual practices starting July 5th through the end of the year, but going back to spiritual practices that worked for you well in the past. Like if there's a certain teacher you liked working with or a certain practice you like doing, going back to that. Now, this is a time where Neptune retrograde, again, happens every year. So you can need to get clear on what's really true for yourself. There's an opportunity here for dispelling illusions or falsehoods or misunderstandings, again, from July 5th through the end of the year. It's like, where have you taken on some ideas that are not really true for you? What path are you following? If it's not fully aligned or not fully, you're seeing clearly, maybe you'll start to see things a little more clearly now in the second half of the year. There's a risk here of escapism. So the spiritual side is you're moving towards understanding, awareness, consciousness, but that can also be you're moving towards just getting out of the material world, not to understand it, but to get out of it, to escape it, you could transcend it in a sense of awareness and mindfulness, or you could escape it from things like distractions, addictions, coping mechanisms, which is important to be very kind and compassionate for yourself. If you notice that, that's usually a healthy strategy that was at some point helpful and really healthy for you to have that strategy to cope in that way or to survive in a certain way. But maybe it's no longer serving in this cycle of the retrograde, especially in Pisces. So you're seeing illusions of like ways that you cope and manage stress and emotions and challenges in life to find which ones actually really serve you the best. So again, this is a long transit. It's not just July, it's through the rest of 2025. So noticing what comes up when you're triggered, when you're stressed, when you're reactive, how do you respond? Where do you go to manage that? Again, with a lot of compassion and kindness. If there's some pattern you see in yourself or some way of being that's not fully serving anymore, just being kind and compassionate for yourself about it, like you would with a friend. Judgment or being harsh or critical or blaming is not going to really help. It's probably just going to make it worse and add shame to the mix. So as you notice these things, just notice, okay, well, when do you feel better? When do you feel more aligned? What really helps you feel like you're moving through the challenges? And there's a theory of addictions that all addictions are just coping strategies. I don't know if that's fully true. I don't know if I fully agree with that, but it's something to observe. And to also notice, like if you change a behavior, what happens? If you take away a coping strategy or a reactive or pattern thing and that you notice, what happens? And it's good to have support with that as well. So there may be some challenges with the lack of direction that comes with this, again, from the second half of the year. But we do have a lot of yang energy going on in July, so it helps kind of bring the fire and motivation. Very positive Jupiter transit coming up through this last part of the year as well. That brings more positivity and abundance and expansion for all of us potentially. But if you are feeling like a little bit listless, restless, directionless in the second half of 2025, I think it is calling us towards spiritual path. So the old ways of controlling, understanding has to be this way, I have to control it, has to be this identity, this role. Anywhere there has to be or shoulds, these things are going to be challenged in this second half of the year. So the new direction is sort of a opening. It's like a less of a, okay, I'm going to do A, B, C, and D. I'm going to reach this goal and this sort of thing. It's more of like, where is your spirit calling you? So I encourage you to keep checking in throughout the second half of the year. What is your inner guidance telling you? Where are you feeling called in your life? What's your intuition saying? And if you have a complicated relationship with your intuition, then this is a good time to help nurture that relationship. Like what's really intuition? What's your ego? What's really control? What's really just protection? Those things can be tricky, I know, but this is an opportunity this second half of the year to investigate and be curious about it. So we've got lots of time of Neptune and Pisces to work with this, not just this year, but next year as well, and so on for quite a while. And Neptune is with Saturn right now. So I'll say just a little bit more about this, but Saturn is where we have our boundaries and restrictions and containment of things. Neptune and Pisces, especially going retrograde, is now challenging that. Have you become attached to an identity, a role? That's where you might start to get misguided or get attached to some identity or role that's not really in service of your spirit and your essence. So again, I think a big theme with this is connect to yourself, connect to your inner guidance. It's so good to use things like external things, teachers, books, podcasts, resources, but I think they should all be pointing you back to yourself. If they are not, then if they're pointing you like you need this thing or this is going to complete you or this is going to solve all your problems, I would always be skeptical of that. But anything that points you back to better understanding yourself, deeper relationship to yourself, deeper trust in yourself, I think that, in my opinion, is a path worth continuing to explore. And a lot of it is getting into your heart rather than your head. The head can just do so much craziness and so much madness, but the heart is still calm, centered, present. Unless, you get triggered, then you need to pause and slow down and reconnect to your heart again. And the heart rate can go up and we can be reactive for sure. But that's the yoga perspective of quieting the mind, The Yoga Sutras teach to quiet the mind, step back, observe the self, observe the sensations, observe the thoughts, observe what's happening, and then you have more sense of choice. And usually the heart is going to be a better guide than the head. You need both, but the heart is going to be a lot more calm and centered and a good guide of what's really true for you, what's really aligned for you through the second half of the year. And then the next notable thing is that on Monday, July 7th, if you want to work with me, this is the last chance to book a reading with me for this season. So that will close, and then I'll focus on the mentorship program starting in August. So if you want to go deeper with me, the mentorship is coming in August. But if you want a one-to-one reading to look at just your chart and all the stuff you're going through, your dashas, transits, how they affect you personally, we do that at the mid-year clarity reading that is available until Monday, July 7th. Check it out at quietmindastrology.com, and you can learn more and sign up there. The next notable transit is the full moon on Thursday, July 10th. And this is in Purva Ashadha in Sagittarius. The full moon in Sagittarius, pretty expansive, positive energy. So the moon here is ruled by Jupiter on this day during the full moon. And Jupiter and the moon are very compatible energies. So this can bring positive emotions, expansion of nurturing practices, more nurturing things. A good day for any sort of nurturing activity. Good day for travel, any sort of adventure and new experience. Sagittarius is adventurous. Purva Ashadha wants to get to the truth of matters. So it's a harmonious, positive day for talking about the truth of a situation, getting to the truth of a matter. Very fun kind of energy, very good day for some sort of celebration. Now, I've talked about this before, but the full moons, there tends to be more accidents. There's more emergency room visits on the full moon than other days. So always be cautious or mindful of how you use your energy or what kind of environments you're around. Things can be a bit more intense, especially with all the yang energy I've mentioned going on last month, still this month. The Mars K2 energy I've been talking about as well. Like that is pretty intense energy going on still through July. But overall, this full moon on the 10th is quite a beautiful energy and good for taking any sort of inspired action. There could be some impulsivity here, some dogmatism if you're like arguing with somebody or getting into political discussions or very opinionated topics. There could be some conflict there. So being aware of that. But there could also be some overconfidence. So just being intentional with your energy on this day, but something very nurturing and fun and adventurous. Good time for a date, good time for any sort of fun little day trip or things like that on the full moon on the 10th. The next notable transit is on Sunday, July 13th. Saturn goes retrograde in Pisces. So this happens every year, and Saturn will be retrograde there until November 28th this year. So this carries us through most of the rest of the year as well. And it's pretty normal, Saturn going retrograde, nothing too alarming about that. But it's an opportunity to go back to structures that have worked well for you. It's a good time to reflect on what sort of structure you're setting up in your life, what kind of routines you have, what kind of habits you have. Slowing down is good. Refining your boundaries and your commitments. Coming back to what disciplines are you really committed to? Did you take on a bunch of new things? Are you overcommitted? Are you overextended? Maybe you're underextended. Maybe you need more challenge in your life. Saturn rewards facing challenges and obstacles. Now, specifically, this is in Pisces. I've talked a lot about this because it started this year, a 2.5-year cycle, Saturn and Pisces going all through the rest of this year and next year into 2027. So while we get this retrograde time, a little bit of slow down, we go back over how we are changing. Pisces is boundless. Saturn wants boundaries. So it's a tricky, unique energy this year of like, where do you draw the line? Where do you say go with the flow? Where do you say create more structure and schedule? This is a very fluid thing. There's no hard rules to this. I think it's a good time to be aware of stira sukha. This is in the yoga tradition, and we talk about stira sukha asana. Every pose in yoga is a balance of effort and ease, stira and sukha. These are sort of contradictions, yin and yang, they're opposites. So Saturn Pisces is a paradox. How do you have boundaries and be boundless at the same time? How do you have structure and control and be free and playful and explorative? There's no one answer to this. It's a paradox. It's a koan. It's like, how do you find this for yourself? And you can look where Pisces is in your chart, what house that's in. It's going to tell you a lot. If you don't know your chart, quietmindastrology.com, you get your free birth chart. And there's a little training there on how to work with this. But it's an opportunity to find that balance of effort and ease, stillness and movement, yin and yang, throughout the next 2 years still. Of like, have you become too rigid? Have you become too loose? It's a continual balancing act. Also, in yoga poses, when you're balancing, you might notice you're never still in one spot. You're always moving. It's dynamic movement. Like in tree pose, your foot is always moving, your body is always moving. So this is, I think, part of the Saturn and Pisces cycle we're going through. Happens once every 30 years. It can bring some sort of flux, uncertainty into all the structures of society, religions, governments, businesses, especially with all the AI movement, and talked a lot about this in the past few years, but there's a lot of change and movement in structures of society. The last time this happened was around the time everything started to just move on to the internet. And there was like this big .com bubble that happened. Everyone wanted to have a website, but nobody really knew what it was or how it fit into society yet. Same thing's happening now, 30 years later, with AI, where everyone knows this is the future, but nobody's quite sure how it fits into society yet. And there can be a lot of fear, Saturn, and uncertainty, and needing to just go with the flow of Pisces. So managing your fear and anxiety is a very important skill still this month and over the next 2 years. But now as Saturn goes retrograde this month, it's really good to go back to, how do you manage your emotions? How do you manage fear and anxiety? What practices do you have? I like the emotional scale a lot. Abraham Hicks talks about it a lot. I find that super useful. Not everybody resonates with it. That's fine. But for me, it works. Like if you notice you're in fear, that's the bottom of the scale. So anything you can do to move up just a tiny bit from fear, even to despair, is a progress. And it's moving you in the direction towards love, fulfillment, expression, creativity at the top of the scale. And you could, even being in depression, getting to anger is movement on the scale. As somebody myself, I struggled with depression years ago. Getting into anger and irritation was actually a sense of growth and progress, and getting out of the freeze mode into some movement. And then staying in anger is obviously not the place to be. It's not super healthy, but it is healthy to get out of being stuck and frozen. So for people who struggle with depression, finding what actually irritates you can actually be a sign of progress, of course, within reason. Yeah, but the emotional scale can be really helpful. I find it really helpful. I was going back to it this past month, as a lot of emotions move for me recently as a Virgo rising with all the Mars, K2, and Leo in my 12th house. It's quite intense. Any other Virgos can relate. But now as Saturn is going back in Pisces this month, it starts. What helps you regulate your emotions in your nervous system? I teach yoga as well, Quietmind Yoga. Quietmind.yoga is the website for that if you want to do yoga practices with me. And I think that's super beneficial. And it brings in all these things, stira and sukha, effort and ease, movement and stillness, to find your center. So we'll keep talking about Saturn throughout the year. Always stuff to talk about with Saturn. The next notable transit this month is on July 16th. The sun moves into Cancer. And this is a very warm energy. The sun, vitality, warmth, leadership, Cancer, nurturing, love, loving affection, nurturing kind of things. So this can be really warm, nurturing energy. If you're in any sort of role of leadership, this is very good for collaborating, connecting with others, bringing in different perspectives, and your own creative expression, doing things that you enjoy, like baking, cooking, crafts, homey kind of stuff, dressing in a comfortable way, just being in your element, taking care of your home, very favorable. Any home renovation projects, home improvement, interior design, getting some plants, time with your pets. If you have children, time with children, all very favorable during this time. Very intuitive energy and very protective energy going from mid July to mid August, as the sun does every month with the solar transits. So we get a month of this sun and Cancer energies, quite nice. There could be some mood swings with it, so being aware of that. The sun, the fire, giant ball of fire in the sky, in Cancer, which can be quite temperamental. So there can be some emotional mood swings, some insecurity, overprotectiveness. Cancer is quite a sensitive sign. When you bring the sun there, now as a leader, you might feel sensitive to criticism, protective, and there could be some difficulty with setting boundaries because Cancer, like the maternal mother energy, it's boundless, kind of like Pisces, right? To be a mother, like the boundary between you and the child blurs a lot. So, same with any sort of Cancer transits and the sun being in Cancer. Now, the boundary of your creativity, your leadership could get blurry here. So, it's important to find the emotional warmth and connection, but still also the sense of self and the sense of your needs and healthy boundaries. Overall, quite a positive energy to carry us from mid July to mid August. Next notable transit is the Mercury retrograde in Cancer on Friday, July 18th. So, this is favorable for revisiting any past emotional connections. So Mercury goes back in our communication and the emotional expression of it in Cancer. If there's any unresolved family issues, good time to address them, connecting with family, talking to old family members, and nurturing kind of reflection. Like you could get very sentimental at this time, very emotional. Like maybe you want to go through your old journals, old photo books, old memories. There could be some tears shed. There could be some sentimental, emotional moments here. It's good to do that if you got old stuff, old pictures you want to go through. Mercury retrograde is sometimes a feared energy, but I think of it as an opportunity to revise, revisit, review, reflect, go back over things. So you can let things kind of pile up until the retrogrades, which happen 3 times a year on average. And now some emotional stuff maybe has moved and changed and shifted in your life. Moving forward, now's the time to slow down and go back over it. If there's some unresolved communication, unresolved things to talk about with loved ones, good time to do it for 3 weeks from July 18th for 3 weeks here until August 11th this year. Of course, sun's here with Mercury in Cancer, so it adds some creativity to it, also a little bit of volatility. So with the Mars K2 thing also going on this month, being aware that Mars K2 thing will end this month on July 28th, so that's nice. But while that's also going on here in mid-July, if there's a big conflict or dispute, maybe cool off a bit, maybe let cooler heads prevail. Don't need to rush into that. Could be a little intense. So Mercury retrograde in Cancer is resolving unresolved emotional stuff, but when it's with the sun here, it adds that combust element. So there could be some miscommunications, some emotional confusion, some over sentimentality and dwelling on the past or dwelling on pains. So being conscious of that, of not overindulging in emotions, but yeah, indulge a little bit. Just don't overindulge, but indulge. Feel the sentimentality, feel the emotions, go back to the photo books, listen to old music you liked, let the feelings be felt. It's quite a lovely energy, especially any sort of romantic things, very nice, very connecting and sentimental to share those memories with loved ones. The next notable transit is on July 21st. This is a Monday, the moon day, and the moon is exalted in Taurus. Lovely energy, and that's the moon at its favorite place to be. So this can bring emotional balance, sense of nurturing, comfort, great intuition, and grounded connections. There could be some stubbornness. Has the reputation for being stubborn. Could be some resistance to change and over attachment to comfort on this day. This is a quick transit, just Monday, July 21st. But it's a nice wave to catch of doing something nurturing, nourishing, connecting with your intuition. Anything to do with emotions, very positive this day, as long as you're not being too controlling or stubborn about it. Good time for eating good food, cooking food, going to a nice restaurant, getting a massage, doing self-care things, going to a spa, restorative yoga, these kind of things, very nice. Thursday, July 24th is our next notable transit. This is the new moon in Pusha in Cancer. So that's the new moon. The sun and moon are conjunct on every new moon. So the moon's joining up with the sun, which is already in Cancer, and just amplifying everything I've been talking about with all this Cancer energy the last half of the month. Nurturing, nourishing, emotional renewal on this day, July 24th. It's a good day to set new intentions in love, relationships, emotional matters. Good time for nurturing any new beginnings. And a lot of intuitive clarity comes through around this time of the new moon. So always, new moons are great for setting intentions. What do you want to move towards? It could be a specific actual goal, but with the Cancer energy, I recommend it's more of a vibe, an energy, a feeling. Like you're just kind of connecting with what feels aligned and not necessarily projecting it so far in the future either, but just that day sort of imprinting the state you want to cultivate. Because everything that we think we want it because it's going to feel good when we have it. We're going to be happy. So if I have this much money, I'll be happy. If I have this job, I'll be happy. If I have this relationship, I'll feel this way. But with the nature of emotions and our perception is we can choose to do things that bring that feeling now. We don't need the money, your job, or relationship to change our state. And in fact, the more we do that, the more we make it dependent on that external thing, the more we suffer. And the more we try to control it, and the more we actually create the opposite effect of what we're going for. So when we want to think, okay, I'm going to have this outcome, and that's probably going to feel peaceful, probably feel relaxed if I have this outcome, you can find ways to bring peace and relaxation now. And especially that day, July 24th, a great day to nurture and imprint those qualities, those feelings that you want to cultivate. The next notable transit is on Saturday, July 26th. We have Venus in Gemini. So we've been talking a lot about nurturing stuff, a lot of Cancer energy. And Venus is going to get to Cancer later, but not this month. It's now Venus is going from Taurus. Venus entered Taurus on June 29th. So for most of July, Venus is in Taurus, its own sign, quite positive, quite harmonious, quite beautiful, all through the month of July for relationships and doing what we love, connecting to what we love. But now it's going to move into Gemini by the end of the month. So Gemini is more playful, more curious. So this is very good for being playful in your relationships and in your artistic expression, finding new creative outlets. Very creative, like one of the most creative transits you can have. It's happening July 26th for about a month, as most Venus transits are about a month, around a month. So this is going to be bringing more adaptability to relationships and more playfulness, more harmony in a sense of like bouncing ideas. It's an intellectually stimulating energy, but it's also the heart. Venus brings more of the heart energy. Gemini brings more of the mind energy. So it's very nice energy. There could be some superficiality, like getting into just playfulness on the surface, and some inconsistency. Gemini is quick in changing. Venus is desire, and desire is always changing as well. There's some desires that are more solid and more rooted, but a lot of times your desire could change moment to moment. So with Gemini, it's like, what about this? What about that? Idea. And Venus is like, yes, yes, play, fun, enjoyment, pleasure. So there could be some superficiality, some inconsistency, lack of emotional depth, distractibility. Be aware of that. Distracted affection. So there's been studies on this, like just having your phone visible changes your ability to focus. So if you struggle with focus, try just putting your phone somewhere that you can't see it. Especially if you're with somebody, especially if you're on a date or with your partner, hide the phone. Like, hopefully everyone listening is already doing this, but that's a definite thing for me, a boundary for me. If I'm with somebody, the phone is not in sight unless if somehow we're using it, but absolute minimum phone usage when actually with somebody in person. So that's like an example of Venus and Gemini on the phone. It's like constant stimulation, constant ideas. If you notice yourself very distracted, and this comes in the end of July throughout August, that's a Vata imbalance. So knowing Ayurveda, that's Vata excess. And our whole modern lifestyle is Vata excess. Constantly getting notifications and distractions and options to engage with everything ever created in the history of the world. Every song, every movie, it's all there at the touch of our fingertip now. We live like kings and queens and rulers could have only dreamed. So focus and intention is everything. Okay, what do you want to do with this one wild and precious life? What do you want to put your energy and attention into? It's the most valuable asset. And every social media company knows that's the most valuable thing is our attention. So with this Venus and Gemini, yeah, let's have fun, be playful. I love to do improv comedy. I love to make jokes. I love to be playful. I love memes, but there's a place for that. And there's a place for focus as well. So this can be really focused on your creative expression. If there's a project you want to move through into July through August, good time for your creative projects, artistic, any sort of thing, music, movies, entertainment, painting, drawing, crafts. Very, very good. End of July throughout August. And yeah, have fun with it. It's a great energy. Those of you who have kids, very fun energy, very playful, very childlike energy. And then to bring in some serious grounding at the end of the month on July 28th is a Monday. We got Mars going into Virgo. And Mars is about taking action. Virgo is about being disciplined, organized, structured in that approach. So a good example of this is an athlete who is very strong, very active, very disciplined, and regimented. And they get up at this time, they go to the gym at this time, they are on this schedule. So this is very Pitta energy. And it's going to bring some great relief after Mars has been in Leo with Ketu. So that is quite an intense transit. I talked about it last month, and it's been going on all basically through June through July. Mars and Ketu together in Leo is what brings about things like big conflicts, wars, plane crashes, intensity that's been happening in the world and public and news and things like that. But on a personal level, it's been a lot of yang energy that needs to be directed into action. Mars loves action. Imagine taking like an athlete, an elite athlete, and just asking them to be sedentary or just sit at a desk all day. All that energy has got to go somewhere. Like it's one of their gifts, right? I think everybody has unique gifts. That's what we see in the birth chart. Is everybody has gifts. When we're looking at a full birth chart, we can see that there's certain strengths and weaknesses. So when you're using those gifts, you feel fulfilled, you feel expressed. When you're not using those gifts, you struggle and you feel unfulfilled and more likely to get irritated, frustrated, anxious, all the challenging stuff that is okay to feel. It's normal, it's part of life. But to get stuck there is, I think, when we're not fully expressing our gifts. And that's what I love to share in my work. It's like, how do you bring out your gifts? And you know it, that's alignment. You feel aligned when you're doing it. You feel misaligned when you're not doing it. So as Mars has been in with K2 in Leo, this is like letting go of identity, letting go of control, letting go of attachments, letting go of roles you think you're supposed to be this way. And that doesn't always mean like losing things. Sometimes it actually means stepping into a new level of power. For those of you, if you're like me, you actually struggle a bit in the opposite direction of being too humble, too self-deprecating, too giving, too yielding. And sometimes you need a little bit more firmness, a little bit more putting a stake in the ground. Is when I worked with one of my mentors many years ago, and she had me. We really did this. I literally put a stake in the ground when I started Quietmind in like 2018 is when I actually put the name. 2017 actually, when I actually put that name to Quietmind, is like, okay, this is what I'm doing. After doing these things for a long time, like really, literally putting a stake in the ground made me take it all a little more seriously and put a little more oomph into it. And as this Mars K2 thing has been happening for me in Leo, it's inspired me to now again make these videos, which I used to do and kind of drifted from and want to really focus on again, and sort of put my stake in the ground at a new level of like, okay, this is what I'm about. This is what I want to share. And I love helping people, and I'm getting amazing results with the clients I've worked with for many years, but just taking a new level of that. And I think there's an opportunity for all of us, regardless of your chart. For me, it's in my 12th house, so it's more spiritual stuff than like astrology and all this. But for you, it could be a different house, different theme. But for all of us, I think it is an opportunity to put a stake in the ground. And then now, as Mars goes into Virgo at the end of the month, to put that into practical action. And what that looks like is going to be different for all of us, but it's where do you want to direct your energy? When do you feel fully expressed? When are you using your gifts? And it doesn't have to be like an athlete and physically, it could be more mental. Mars in Virgo is actually very good technical ability, very smart, very good organization ability. So we're all getting a taste of that, regardless of where your Mars, where your Virgo is in your chart. Mars is coming into your chart where Virgo is in your chart and bringing in this action and focus and grounded energy to say, okay, these are the boundaries, this is the container, this is the direction I want to go. And again, look where Virgo is in your own chart to get more specific guidance on this. But it's a good time for any sort of problem solving, being service oriented. I always focus on that. Service is the sort of cure all, and you're struggling in your direction. Help somebody. Anybody you can help, any way you can help is beneficial. Generally, being disciplined in your focus is very good now through basically all of August. Taking practical action, problem solving. There could be some over criticism, being harsh on yourself, rigidity, like perfectionism, overburdening yourself with tasks, taking on too much. So, make the to-do list, but then throw it away and just focus. The to-do list to me as a Virgo rising, I'll tell you, is that my Virgo energy is super strong, and you work with this Virgo energy for yourself. Yeah, make the to-do list, make the plan, but then let it go. Don't get too attached to it. Don't put this pressure on yourself like, oh, I've got 15 to-dos. I got to do all of them today. That's a guaranteed recipe for overwhelm. So it's, oh, I have these 15 to-dos. Which one is actually the most important? And I'm just going to forget about the rest and do that one with my full focus and energy. And no, it'll probably take twice as long as I think. That happens for me. A lot happens for most people. Things usually take longer than we think. So if you think it's going to be 30 minutes, probably going to be an hour. And then finish that completely and then move on to the next. Not being perfect, not needing to be 100%, but like 80% is a B. That's good in grading. So you can move on. So it's like that, I think, throughout August. Like set an intention, set a plan, but don't get too rigid or controlling about it. And use that as a sort of discernment or filter to know what action to take. Mars wants to take action. You're going to have a lot of energy to take action and get stuff done in August. But what action do you take? How do you know you're not just spinning your wheels? That's the Virgo organization part. List it out, think about it, give yourselves like 5 to 10 minutes to think about it, and then put it into action. Don't overthink it. Don't get too rigid. Don't beat yourself up because you didn't do it all. That's not really the goal of planning, I think, or to-do list. It's not really to try to do everything because nobody can, but it's to prioritize and then do that thing and then do the next and the next and then rest. And rest is just as important as the work. So that's Mars in Virgo coming up at the end of the month throughout August. And then speaking of all that Virgo energy, I share everything I have inside of the Vedic Astrology Mentorship, which will be opening in late August after that Mercury goes direct. So I don't like to focus on starting new things during Mercury retrograde. I recommend you don't either. But that week, on that Thursday, August 14th, I'll be hosting a special live event about the mentorship. So stay tuned for more details on that. If you're signed up for my emails, you'll hear about it in your inbox where I send the free weekly horoscope. So if you want this calendar I'm sharing into your inbox with my notes written out for you, you can subscribe at quietmindastrology.com. And if you want to go into how this specifically affects you and your birth chart, check out the mid-year clarity reading at quietmindastrology.com. Open just this week. Last year it sold out when I did this, so it'll probably sell out. I've got limited space before the mentorship starts, so I want to make sure if you want to get a reading this year, this is the time to book before the mentorship starts. And as a side note, if you book a reading and you then want to do the mentorship, you can apply the reading to the mentorship. So it's win-win. And you can check that out at quietmindastrology.com right now. My name is Jeremy Devins. If you enjoyed this, leave a comment on YouTube or Spotify, share it with a friend, and look forward to sharing more with you next time on the Quiet Mind Astrology Podcast.